Welcome back everyone to Beat the Game. My name's Steve and today we're going to continue our little exploration of Wanda Maximoff. And now let's look at her. Is she viable in protection? So we do know that we have a lot of control, support, healing, keep your allies alive. So let's, or your friends alive in Wanda Maximoff. So let's see what kind of synergies we can find while looking at her play kit and looking at the cards that are offered. All right, so protection is normally an aspect that you want to stay in hero form most of the time, because most of the things that happen in protection, you kind of want to be able to use it, and most of these responses are in hero form. So some characters, it's a little weird if you, especially for a character that kind of wants to flip back and forth just to take care of their superpowered siblings ability. But I think in protection here we can find a nice place where we can actually stay in hero form, especially that she's allowed to have that extra hand size because of the Sorcerer Supreme card that she is. All right, so let's look at the events in protection. All right, so let's look. There's a lot of events in protection, and most of the time when you think of protection, you look at the defense. Oh, a defense of 2. It's not amazing. It's not super beautiful, but it is something that you can work with. All right, so you guys all saw me that with protection, even with Iron Man, I was able, with a defense of 1, still able to block attacks of like 5 or 6 and take no damage. As the card pool evolves, obviously we'll be able to have more of these options. So, but let's look at defense. Like, what does it matter? Is this okay? Is this something we can deal with? So let's take a card, Expert Defense. Now, is this a card I personally would play in her deck? Not unless I'm trying to do a take no damage challenge. All right, again, it is a cool card. It is +3 defense, but since Wanda is very event focused and we want her events to be able to kind of close out the games, it's going to be very, very hard to find events that I'm going to want to include in this deck. That's me personally, but again, let's try to look at the strategies before just, my opinion and my suggestions. All right, so Expert Defense, it's not a card that obviously I would pick just because of it's a 0 cost event. Yes, it can protect you, but if I think about what she has in her kit, she has those magic shields that stay on the board that basically do the same thing when I actually need it. So this is how I evaluate. She has something that does this and it stays on the board. I'm going to go with this before this. All right, that is my reasoning. Counterpunch, well, with an attack of 1, this makes absolutely no sense. So Counterpunch for me is eliminated right out of hand. Now this is something where I do like the Get Behind Me's. Now this, again, I love control, chaos control. This is an event that I would love to put in her deck. That means between her Warp Reality, Order and Chaos, and the 3 Get Behind Me's, she would have 5 counter spell events, or 5 counter treachery events, and then 1 counter everything event. So for me, that is something I really, really enjoy in the multiplayer game, because I can cancel your Shadows of the Past. I can cancel that bad card. Or again, there's a lot of treacheries that are really nasty. Not all of them, but there's always like 2 or 3 really bad treacheries in the encounter deck that you really, really don't really want to see. That is just gonna hinder your game. So there's two philosophies on this. One, well, whatever, I'll plow through. The other is, well, you know what? If I can cancel it and not have to deal with it, which is better? All right. So it's basically it's all opinionated. Whether you like to just get those challenges and dig through them, or if you want to make it easier on yourself, if I can just take an attack instead of having to scheme out. But the thing is, if you're dealing with an advance that loses you the game, you're going to be happy to have this get behind me and just take an attack instead. So this is where you have to weigh the pros and the cons. For me, personally, if I was going to build a deck in protection, I would definitely be putting at least one, maybe two of these, and just to have ultimate control over the board. And that for me is kind of very thematic with what she has. She is the Scarlet Witch. She controls everything. So this is something I definitely want to lean into for protection. So those get behind me's are a definite include for me. Now, sidestep. Again, it is a cool event and it does do damage, especially that we can pay for it with the Nerves of Steel. Prevent 3 damage. And this is a defense card, so it must be from an attack because it is labeled defense. The defense must come from an attack or prevention from damage from an attack. So it cannot be from something else. Again, I'd rather have my magic shields than the sidesteps, unless again I'm going for take no damage deck. But this is not a card that I really want to be running unless I'm fighting. Let's say, the Wrecking Crew or other like really, really hard-hitting villains that can just wreck me out of nowhere. So this is a definite maybe depending on the scenario that you're running up against. But would it be an auto-include in a deck for me? No. Perseverance. Now this is another one that I am definitely thinking about. Now, but this depends on the strategy you want to use. So if you're thinking, I'm going to do the flip-flop strategy and I'll be going to from back and forth into alter ego hero to get more cards, then Perseverance is a definite include in your deck. But if I'm running a Perseverance deck where I'm always tough, I don't think the Get Behind Me's are going to synergize well with that, because Get Behind Me is a hero event. So if you're flipping back and forth, it might be counterintuitive to the counter spells that you want to be using. So if you're going for a big control board, or if you're just running for like defense for all, like I'll just do protection for everyone, and there you go. It just really depends on what kind of strategy you want to go into as you're building your deck. Again, I'm not a big fan of a lot of events, but if I'm going to be doing a more flippy floppy action, I think I want Perseverance in my deck. So for me, if it's going to be most likely a one of, because I know I'm going to be wanting to go to alter ego at some point. I don't think I'm going to run. I may run 2 if I have room, but I think 1, maybe 2 is going to be where I'm going to draw the line for this with Scarlet Witch. So it is definitely a card that I want to include in my deck, so I'm going to definitely think about that when I go in. Next one, Desperate Defense. Now, again, this is pretty cool. In protection, if I get my Armored Vest on, I have a defense of 3. I can block minions. I like it. And also, I get to ready. So this is something where I kind of like. This is one of the ones I like to include just because if I can ready as well and have a perfect defense, for me it makes sense. But again, it is going to be probably a 1, maybe 2 of in my deck. Again, I don't want to flood my deck with too many events unless my strategy is I'm going to block for you, I'm going to block for you, I'm going to block for you, even if I have Black Widow, not Black Widow, even if I have Scarlet Witch, which doesn't seem like the great defender. For me, it kind of feels weird thematically. It's like, yeah, man, I'm super good. I can just defend for everyone. It's not very thematic to the character. It definitely is an archetype that you can explore. Will it be amazing? I'm not sure. Maybe it would. Again, it's not something that I see as a viable strategy, in my opinion. But it is definitely something that can work. But again, with me trying to limit the number of events I want to play, if I put 1 in, it's going to be maybe 1 of big, maximum 1 of. But I'm going to put it in the cards that I really think I want to play. Preemptive Strike, again, just to prevent some damage. I do like the Chaos Control, so this is pretty funny because this is one of those cards. If I want to make a fun, weird deck, and I want to run the preemptive strikes, I would kind of want to go with Chaos Control. Oh, it's a boost of 0, and actually try to get a boost of 2 or 3 to actually start doing damage. So like a passive aggressive deck, which is kind of cool because she does put in 2-3 pips in with her fraying sanity in the obligation. So if you're going up a scenario where there's a lot of, you know, possibilities of like 3 pips, I think Preemptive Strike could be a very cool card to add with this. So it's like, yeah, come at me, bro. I'm going to be using these Preemptive Strikes. Again, it always depends on the kind of strategy you want to use. I think this is something I would like to explore as a fun thematic deck of just like dealing a lot of damage, like a passive aggressive deck, which I called that kind of strategy. So this is something I do enjoy. I think something this could be pretty amazing, but you really have to build around that deck. All right, so it's going to be something that you really want to think about and like, okay, what can I do? What am I going to do with this? And what else? But it is definitely something that I would like to explore in one of the builds I'm going to be playing. I haven't tried that yet, but it is something that I'm thinking about, and I'm like, ooh, this could be fun. All right, here is the cool protection card that comes with her. It is the Bait and Switch. Now, it is a hero action, a thwart. So again, if you are confused, this card is affected by confusion. One thing again to remind people with the preemptive strike, even if the villain has retaliate, it's not going to be effect because it is not an attack event. It is a defense event. So that's why it's pretty fun. All right, and then Bait and Switch. So what do I think of Bait and Switch? I think it's a fantastic card. I think it's very cool. It is what protection needs to remove threat. That being said, she does have a lot of events in her deck that can also remove threat. Again, I'm talking about the Hex Bolts, which is more of it is a variable. So is it something I would personally use? I think personally, I would just rely on her basic ability and then kind of manipulate the deck rather than just having the villain attack me. For that. But again, if you want to build a very event-heavy deck with her, this could be a card that you would want to include. Personally, I don't think it makes the cut for my decks. I'd rather rely on more permanent solutions for threat removal because it only removes from the main scheme. So again, this is personal choice, but for me, I don't think it makes the cut, even though it's a very cool card. Another cool card that I don't think is going to make the cut is the Never Back Down. Again, depending on what strategy you want to use, if you're using the preemptive strikes, desperate defense, and you want to really go for an event-heavy deck, it's not bad. But this one you actually have to defend just to stun the villain. So unless you're like, you don't really need to remove any threat and exhausting you, and you don't mind being exhausted, then cool. But I think for me, again, I think if you want to build these types of deck with a lot of the like stun effects and always be stunning, I think these are really good with characters that can ready. She doesn't have that ability. She doesn't have that option in the card pool to ready her unless you're putting in tenacities. So I don't mind it, but again, unless I'm building a specific control deck where I'd never want the villain to attack me, or attack me as least as possible, maybe I'm going to be including these. But I think, for me, I don't think it's going to be it's not a permanent solution. So for me, it doesn't make the cut. Unfortunately, like I said, I'm very, very picky with the events that I'm going to be running with Scarlet Witch. Momentum Shift, heal 2 damage, deal 2 damage, is another one that I'm kind of, you know what, I'd rather just put a downtime. Again, if you want but again, depending on the strategies that you want to use, if you want to stay in hero form almost the entire game, then probably running one of these in your deck is probably not a bad idea, because again, you can kind of heal yourself a little bit, and keeping her healthy and strong is not a bad idea. So I would say, depending on the strategy you're using, a one momentum shift is not bad, depending again on the scenario. If there's a lot of minions, if there's not a lot of minions, or it's 2 damage to an enemy, so you can actually do that to the villain. But again, I think if I'm putting one, it's going to be just a one of, and again, I think there's just a couple of better cards in order to do that. If you're just thinking about healing damage. But if you are doing that passive aggressive thing, that might be a good card that you want to include in your deck. All right. Second Wind. Again, now we're getting into these 3 cost events. 3 to heal 5, or 3 to heal 4 is not bad. 5 is even better. But again, I think I'm going to be focusing more on dealing more damage. And then if I do need to recover, I'll just go to Alter Ego instead of staying in hero form for that. So for me, Second Wind doesn't make the cut, especially it's more for the cost than anything else. Muster Courage. This is one that I think I would like to put into the game. I think I would run one of in my decks just because, again, protection, giving a couple of tough status cards to a few characters is always good, and then you can just take the hit. It is a one of maximum that I would be running unless I'm going for an ultimate control where basically I'm just going to be giving tough status cards, healing everyone, staying in hero form, and just running these cards to keep everyone tough and everything, which is not it's not an unviable solution. It is not an unviable gameplay unless you're playing against Crossbones and you and then he just pierces everything away. I think this strategy would be pretty fun to play. So Muster Courage, you could just do that on pretty much 2 characters in the beginning of the game and then 3 characters in the late game. It buys you a lot of time. All right, so that for me is, I think, somebody that I really, really enjoy in this. All right, so definitely I'd be running probably a one of these. And then finally, the tackles. I think I'd rather do a Hex Bolt and see what I can get. Just give a. Let me just remind. What is the Hex Bolt? Place a status card on a character. Oh man, so that's even better. Actually, I'm gonna take that back. I'm gonna be like this Muster Courage. Nah, you know what? I kept thinking about stunning or confusing the villain, but after reading Hex Bolt, I can just give myself a tough status card. Oh, wow, man, that's even better. I didn't even realize that until now. I'm like, let me just reread that for a second. So, again, Tackle, Muster Courage are going to be out unless I'm really, really rooting to do a specific build where I'm just gonna use Muster Courage over and over and just keep everyone tough. Man, just think about it. If there's if you're doing 2 toughs once, twice, 3 times, man, and you just keep doing toughs on everyone's staying healthy, everyone's staying in hero form and dealing damage, threat is under control because it is a form of threat mitigation. I think it's pretty solid. It's pretty solid. So there's really ways to think about this. So let's look at the ones that I definitely think should make the cut in your builds. All right, so Get Behind Me's for sure. Perseverance, depending on the solution you want. Desperate Defense and Preemptive Strikes, and finally Muster Courage are the 5 events that I think you should look into building around mostly. These I think are the top 5 event cards. Again, I don't think you should put 3 of each in there because then your deck's just going to be all over the place. I think if you focus on one type of strategy, you'll be good. But just again, it's just basically how you feel, how you want to play it. I'm going to be building a deck at the end of this, and then I'm going to be trying something. Again, it's a deck I've never tried, but I can imagine working in multiple scenarios over the course. All right, so I think those are the ones I like the most for this. And just, again, looking into the strategy behind protection, all right? So what do I want to do as a protection player, all right? Do I want to control? Do I want to heal? Do I want to do some damage while healing? That's mostly solo play, but I think it's viable solutions. Now let's look at the support cards, and these are the cards that I am definitely going to be rooting for almost all the time. So it's pretty easy. Night Nurse, it's not even a question. It's not even debatable. This goes into every protection deck. I'm not even going to waste time on this. And then med teams. Now, I do like a med team here and there. I don't think I'd be running 3 in my decks, but I think if there's a few allies that I really like that I want to keep into play, again, if you're going to be playing the passive aggressive with Nova and Quicksilver, and there's a few Avengers now in protection, and if you can make where are my Avengers? I have Brother Voodoo and oh no, they're X Factor. Oh yeah, it's true, they're X Factor. So there's only Brother Voodoo who's an Avenger, and then you can make people Avengers with the honorary Avenger, which is again you could use the what's it called there, the thing to have 4 allies, which I think is pretty fun. But again, it would be very limiting, so I don't think that Avenger strategy would be worth it in there. I think sticking to 3 defense allies is pretty good, but we'll look into those allies in a minute. Again, so med teams, it depends if you want to use some of those allies for extra damage. I'm looking at you, Iron Fist, Nova, and Luke Cage. I think these are like the guys you probably want to keep alive. So mid team is mostly, I'm a very big advocate of keep those allies alive. So mid team, 1 in the deck for this protection build I think would make sense. 2 if you really, really want to abuse of Quicksilver of that 2 damage all the time. Because he can do 4 damage, do 2, ready, do 2, ready. He readies 1 time. Again, very thematic to Quicksilver. So yeah, and if you want to just keep him alive while you go to alter ego and everything. So I think that's mostly what I would use my thing for. So that's just me. So maybe 1 med team and Night Nurse for shizzle would be definitely included. Now let's look at the upgrades. What will we put in? Now again, depending on the strategy you want to use, I'm a very big fan of that armored vest. Any low cost permanents that you can put on the table is always a win in my book. So armored vest, unflappable, obviously. And if I'm doing this, I'm probably just going to be defending for extra card draw, because I think one of the things that you're looking for is ways to deal damage. But if you think about it, once you have, let's say, armored vest, unflappable, electrostatic armor, and you have all these really good cards, and you get to draw more cards for just defending without having to use events to defend. Like, if you're tough and then you just take the villain and then you block a minion, and then you're laughing, you draw an extra card. Oh, well, now I can do 2 hex bolts instead of just 1. Or I can do molecular decay. So with her, she has a lot of events that help deal damage. So if you want to just, soak in some damage or defend most of the time, it's still good. The only thing you have to worry about after that is threat control. So, and then again, this is always about decisions, how you're going to be playing it. Oh, it's not like, oh, well, my character can't thwart or can't do anything. I'm always, locked down in protection. It's not good. It's not good. It's all the time. It's going to be how you're playing this character within that aspect. So again, if you're afraid of threat removal, all right, again, you have those hex bolts that can do it, but including 3 Indomitables in your deck is definitely going to be a solution that is very viable. 1 custom upgrade. Once you see that you need to, oh, you know what? I need to remove some threat next turn. You know what? It's getting a little high, so I will actually use my Indomitable this turn to remove some threat, and then I'll be safe, and then I can save the other ones there. Because this is a card that I'd obviously put 3 in my decks, just, to be able to defend and then to ready up. But I'm only defending if I can draw cards from these, or take no damage, and then so that is how I see it with this. So Indomitable, definitely a 3 of. Same thing for electrostatic armor. 1 of in the deck is enough. If you're playing solo, if you're playing with a multiplayer, then maybe another one. Nerves of Steel, again, if you are going to be running a lot of protection events, yay. If you're not running a lot of protection events, so that means if you're not running the desperate defenses and the preemptive strikes and stuff like that, then it is not worth it. It's But again, this one, it's so tempting now. Like, oh, I can just play this and then I'll have one or two. I've made the mistake before where I was like looking at it. I'm like, oh, I only had 3 events. I'm like, well, it wasn't worth it. So as much as I like Nerves of Steel, because I'm trying to do a more permanent solution, and I'm not going to have that many defense events in my deck, this is for me, my personal thinking, then no, I'm not going to be running this Nerves of Steel. All right, so it's going to be a pass for Nerves of Steel for me. Defensive stance is a preparation. Again, I have my magic shields that do the same for 1, but this is a permanent that stays on the table. So yes, I will definitely include 1 of in my deck because I want to have my magic events, my chaos magic, not my chaos magic. I want to find my Scarlet Witch events more often. So putting stuff on the table and leaving it there, that it's, even if it's not useful right away, if it comes useful a little bit later, I'm like, oh no, he's going to attack me, it's going to kill me. Well, there you go. I can actually use this and be like, all right, cool, I'm good. And then I can finish the boss on my turn. Because sometimes, you know, how often does it come into a cliffhanger where you're like, oh man, I'm so close, I could win the game. But oh no, he's attacking me, I'm going to die. I have to defend, I can't do this, blah, 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 whatever. But having cards like that can just save your butt when in a pinch, for me, it's always an auto include. All right, at least 1 of. And then there's these really interesting energy barriers. For me, it's a yes. Definitely include energy barriers in your deck. Would I run 3? Maybe 2, maybe 3, depending on how thick my deck is going to get. I really, with her, I really think that focusing on a deck that is around 40 cards is going to be your main goal, and as many cards that you can get rid of your deck as quickly as possible is going to make a huge difference. So if you are a big fan of those energy barriers, you know, if there's a lot of minions, or if the villain has retaliate and you can just kind of kill him with this, with those little passive damages, man, I go for it. It's all good. But like I said, I don't hate the card. I like the card, and it stays on the table, which is what you want with Scarlet Witch. More cards that stay on the table. I definitely recommend, you know, use 2, leave it there, and the last one, just use in case of emergency, or just always use in case of emergency. Once you have 3 out of there, you know, you take an attack of 3, you just prevent 3 and go beep 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 beep. So this is for me, like, if you don't need it, don't use it. That is what, pay for it, leave it there. Forget about it, and then move on. Move on to your decks. Now, a lot of people think differently than me. They're like, no, why would I pay for a card if I'm not? Why would I put a card on the table if I'm not going to use it? Me, I'm more into the long game strategy. A lot of people just like to, I'm just going to deal damage and try to kill the villain as fast as possible. You know, and it makes perfect sense. I understand the reasoning behind it. I'm like, well, if I can finish him off faster, I can, you know, I'm going to be less likely to get the bad encounter cards and everything, which it makes perfect sense. Don't get me wrong. Me, if I'm playing protection, I kind of like the long game where I'm just like, yeah, nope, I'm going to foil. I like playing with my food. I'm like, nope, that's not happening. Nope, you can't do this. Nope. So again, it's all about how you feel and how you want to play these characters. Again, would they work in every aspect? Yes, they do. Every character works in every aspect. It just depends how you see the game and how you decide to play the game. All right, there you go. And then let's look at those allies that you want to be playing. All right. So for me, Clea, yes, of course, a 2-cost ally is always great, and then she just keeps reshuffling. I think I get really dependent on Clea if I put her in the deck. So for me, is she great? She is a very good ally. Don't get me wrong, but I'm going to be wanting to keep some allies into play that I prefer, that I think are going to have a better impact than just remove 1 threat and go away. So Clea does not make the kit. It does not make it in my ally pool. All right, Brother Voodoo. You definitely want Brother Voodoo. So for 3, first of all, he can thwart for 4 and then go away. So he is, the 2 thwart is priceless. That is something that you want to see in those allies that can thwart for 2. You want those. So in protection, there's not that many. There's only 2 that can thwart for 2. So definitely Brother Voodoo is a guy that you want to keep on the table. Well, not keep it on the table. You want to use him. Find one of your great events. Maybe you'll get your your chaos magic, or you'll get the molecular decay, or the your hex bolt, which will let you play other things. Again, this is very good because she does have he helps you find the events that you want to be playing. So I like this card very, very much for her. So Brother Voodoo is one of those auto includes for me. Same for Black Widow. If I'm like I said, when I was talking about ultimate control deck, Black Widow, the 3 get behind me's, and the chaos, that is 6 chaos, order and chaos, and the other one warp reality, that is 6 canceled events. That is basically deny, deny, deny. The boss is just going to be crying, and you're just going to be laughing at him the entire game. Be like, nope, nope, nope. The only problem I see here is if you're playing Ultron, because with the get behind me's, is you're just going to be getting more drones. So unless you have a good setup for that, you maybe be careful with Ultron with that kind of strategy. But against pretty much anybody else, I'm like, you're basically just wrecking his day every time. So I think this is going to be very, very fun synergy, especially with Black Widow, and once you have all these other upgrades that you can be playing. So Black Widow for me is an ally I definitely want to keep on the board. Poor Warlock. 3 for a 1/1 that you can keep him into play. For me, I'm sorry, Warlock. I like you, X Factor guy, but unless there's something that can increase your stats or something like that, unless like somebody's playing aggression with me and giving you a boost, it's not for me. It's not worth it. He's not worth it. Same for Multiple Man. Yes, I do enjoy the fact that you can put 3 allies on turn 1. But like if you get him on turn 1, it's great. But again, there's a lot of buts in here. There is more allies that I want to keep on the table rather than that. First of all, if I'm thinking I'm going to keep Quicksilver into play the entire game, that means I only have 2 spots. If I want to be able to control most of the encounter deck, my second spot is going to Black Widow. After that, I just want a revolving door of allies that can, just come in and do stuff. So for me, it's going to be very, very hard to decide who I want. Now, if I'm going to be wanting to play like an Avengers strategy. Now, this is complicated, but it can be done. So basically, I'm going to be cycling Brother Voodoo and Quicksilver, and then I can have Black Widow, I could have Luke Cage and Nova as Avengers, and just keep these 3 there as honorary Avengers, and then use Brother Voodoo and Quicksilver just to come in, do some thwarting, and then just kind of cycle through the deck and then see them again. And then it is, like I said, it's not a super quick, I'm going to win it, this is going to make me win strategy right away, but it is pretty cool. So all right, let's look at the next guy. So sorry, Multiple Man, you do not make the cut for me at all. Sorry, buddy. No. Luke Cage, again, very good protection ally. He's got 5 health. He can take some punches, and he can deal 10 damage or even do 12 damage or before he goes away. So for me, that 2 damage is pretty good, especially. Is it the best? No. The fact that he comes in with a tough, I kind of enjoy a little bit more. But again, if I'm just looking at the protection cards, he is a definite maybe, because there's other cards even if I'm going to be complementing the deck. So unfortunately, Luke Cage does not make it for me. Nova, again, he is damaged, but I have to kind of build around that. So she has a lot of mental resources in her deck, and I think her lightning. What are her lightning cards? The molecular decays are the lightning ones. So I don't think I'm going to want to spend a lightning just to do 2 damage with Nova. I do like him. I do, if I have my Quinn Carrier into play, and maybe I put an enhanced reflex in there just to kind of feed him. Yeah, maybe he makes sense. But for me, Nova is like, yeah, I'm still iffy. But again, it depends what kind of deck you want to build. If you want to be doing like passive aggressive, because he really combos well. Like I said, if you set up the combo with the get behind me's and the energy barriers and the which I call the passive aggressive control, you're just basically, you'll make the villain attack you for the treacheries. You'll be able to lightning bolt him, and then you'll have the preemptive strikes, and then you'll have the energy barriers, take no damage. And basically, because the villain keeps attacking you, you kind of dwindle them down slowly without even fear of retaliation. So I think I like that strategy. So Nova is an ally that I do consider almost all the time in my deck. And then finally, Iron Fist, of course. Well, Iron Fist, if you want to do running the stun game, Iron Fist is the man for you. Again, if I'm cycling through allies and I'm only keeping 2 allies in play, it's a little bit more challenging to decide who I want to keep. But again, Iron Fist, if I'm just going to cycle 3 allies, I'm going to keep Black Widow into play and then cycle everyone else, or Black Widow and Nova into play, or Black Widow and Quicksilver into play, and then just cycle 1. Then I would be like, well, forget Nova, use Iron Fist, and then Luke Cage, and then just cycle these guys. Or even just, if you're just going to cycle, then use Clea and then Iron Fist and Black Widow and Brother Voodoo, and just cycle these guys. So that would make perfect sense for me into that cycle run. Okay, so you use him, he attacks twice, he defends once, and he's like, so basically he saves you. He's really good. Like I said, he's so good. Like he really protects you. But you really want to see what are you building, what kind of deck are you building to make these guys cycle. All right, because you keep there on the plate, and then you cycle him, and her. You cycle these 3, and then you just keep Quicksilver and her into play, and you keep healing Quicksilver with your med teams, and and just go like that. And then you don't need anybody else. Anybody else is just irrelevant, because these guys are just going to go through the deck, and then once you have your events, and there you go, let's bring him back this time. I got my power of, cool, let's just play him again for like 2 resources, boom, done. And there you go, guys. So this is protection. I'm going to take 2 seconds. I'm going to build the deck right here. I'm going to include some of the basic cards. I'll include a couple of cards, and this would be my take on protection. Maybe I'll even build 2 decks for just 2 different strategies. So, and let's see where that goes. All right, guys. So give me 2 seconds. All right, guys. So this is the deck build that I would choose for protection. This is basically what I call a control, like super control deck, with a lot of options, for damage. So thin out the deck. So I'm running 2 powers of protection and the 3. Oh wait, this is what I forgot to do last time. Right, I'm just gonna go just to give you the high view. All right, so there you go. So this is the resources we're using. So 5 double resources, or potentially 5 double resources. As far as events go, I'm running 2 get behind me's, 1 perseverance, and 1 order in chaos. Again, limiting the number of events is always crucial here. So there is the events that I'm running, and for protection. And then the support cards, I'm running the Night Nurse, I am running the 2 med teams, and I'm running a Quinn Carrier. Extra resources are always good. As far as upgrades go, I do have a few. So I have the Electrostat. Well, I call it the Triumvirate. So the vest, the armor, and the unflappable. I'm also running 2 Indomitables, and then I'm running 2 energy barriers, 1 defensive stance, and the Sorcerer Supreme. And that is going to leave us just a room for a few allies, and the allies are going to be Brother Voodoo, Black Widow, Iron Fist, and Lockjaw. So never underestimate the power of the 2 threat removal. If I was going to add an extra card in here just to go to 42, if you are more of a purist and you don't want to go above 40 cards, then I just suggest remove the the perseverance, get rid of one of the events, and if you don't mind, I would put in just one Honorary Avenger to play on Black Widow, so she can thwart twice and then get healed, and then thwart twice and then get healed. So again, so it's a permanent 2 threat, especially with the med teams. You can heal her up, and then she's always there as well. If she's not thwarting, she can counter the really bad encounter card that's coming in. So this is like a very, very strong control deck with some allies that come in that are going to do some stunning effects. Your damage is going to be from your events, hex bolts, and molecular decays. Everything else is just keeping you alive in order to do all these nasty things to the villain, all right? And then countering all the really, really bad cards that can happen to you. So 41 card deck, that is it for the deck. I'll post a little link for my, this is, let's just call it like, what would I call this? You know, Cosmic Control. There you go. Let's just call it Cosmic Control. Let's give it a flashy name, all right? And that is, I think it would be super solid for solo play. Yeah, I don't see any weaknesses. Maybe against, again, a villain like Red Skull, who comes at you with a lot of side schemes, then I would probably adjust that a little bit more. But I think for anything else, this deck is pretty solid to take on pretty much any villain. Ultron, maybe Ultron as well. Like, I think Ultron, because Ultron is so up in the air, and then these two, I think for minion control, I think you're good. I think you're good with everything except for so Ultron and Red Skull, which are the two baddest of the bads in terms of villains. I think this is where you might want to have to tweak a couple things for against those scenarios. But aside from that, I think these decks are pretty solid to take on pretty much anything on expert level and give you a pretty easy time. Again, I haven't tried this, but this is me looking at the cards, looking at the possible scenarios that can happen. The only two things I see this deck maybe running into trouble with, it would be Protection, Wanda versus Red Skull and Ultron. But again, why would you be running this with these characters when you know that it's going to be super challenging in solo? So exactly. So there's some things that you might not want to do with protection aspects in against certain scenarios. It just doesn't work. Like, sometimes you can find a way, but you'll have to force it to work. But I think this is a pretty solid deck, and I said maybe I can make another one, which is more of like a more event focused deck that is not going to focus on her cards, but mostly on just giving her tough and stuff like that. So let's I'll make another deck. Let's if you guys like this little tiery deck crafting here, I'll make another deck which has a total different vibe, again in protection, which is going to be more, again, villain control, would always be stunning. So the villain's basically not going to do anything. All right, here the villain is still going to attack you. We're not going against the grain. We have the Iron Fist that can make him stop attacking us, and we're just kind of controlling the encounter deck mostly with this deck. And then we'll just do another deck. Let's just do another deck. All right, so let's look at the second deck build that we want to do. All right, so here is, this is going to be a really, really weird build, but it should be very, very cool and thematic, because if you don't know, actually Wanda was actually part of X Factor for a while. So this is kind of going with the X Factor vibe. We're basically going to be playing multiple men that are going to be staying there the entire game. All right, so this is the point. So our main thing is we're going to put multiple men, and this is the only ally we're playing. And once he's out, they all stay there the entire game. You're like, what? What? That's right. So we keep 3 multiple men on the table at all time. All right, and how we're going to keep them into play is we are going to make sure they stay alive all the time by including 3 muster courages, all right? So that means we're just going to be running these to keep these guys alive and having always the tough status card. So every time we play this, we buy ourselves 2 turns. And then once they're like, oh shoot, we all the toughs are gone. All right, wait, don't worry about it. I'm gonna play some more toughs on you. And then if just in case they don't get tough, all right, they're not tough enough, I'm putting 2 perseverances so I can flip back and forth. So that's why I'm running 2 perseverances so I can actually be tough as well. So if ever they're not tough, I can take the hit and not worry about it. Now you're like, well, Steve, if you're flipping up and down, like, aren't you afraid of threat? Yes, I am. So that's why we're putting 3 baits and switches. So the 3 baits and switches are gonna make sure that either I take the hit or one of my guys takes the hit, and then just removes all the threat and keeps control of the situation the entire time. Now the other events, obviously, we're gonna be playing are the 2 get behind me's. Again, just for more control over the scenario, which I think is going to be fine. The upgrades and supports we're running are pretty simple. We're going to be running Night Nurse, Avengers Mansion, and a Queen Carrier. And then, Steve, you're not running med teams? Nah, it doesn't need it. You don't need the med teams. If all your guys are always tough, you're never going to need it. And then you should never take any damage as well, because you'll always have those blockers. Now, if you don't see a multiple man on your first turn, then that could be a little bit problematic, and you might see him a little bit later, but you can still kind of build up your engine as things go. All right. As far as upgrades, I am putting the triumvirate of upgrades just in case I do need to block or something like that. So it's basically cards out of the deck. And then we're running also a Sorcerer Supreme, and then we're running 2 Powers of Protection. And that's obviously to pay for the Muster Courages, and then 3 double resources. So again, the quicker we can kind of just do that, and then be completely safe with no damage, just super hardcore, just have some fun, stay in hero form, flip down when we need it, the threat's under control. Oh, there you go, we have a bait and switch now. All right, so the threat can go up, it doesn't matter, we'll just bait and switch it, have the villain attack us and be like, well, whatever. All right, so that is the second deck strategy. I'll post both decks. If you guys want to try these out, this is just little creation deck building. I thought it was a tribute to the X Factor from the 1990s comic of X-Men, where you actually see, was it Wanda or was it X Factor? I forget. Or maybe it was Polaris. Maybe I'm getting confused. Whatever, don't matter. This is just for fun. Anyway, I thought it was a cool little wink to the X Factor because I don't play multiple men too much, and I thought this could be, and that's not only limited to her. You could probably do this deck with any character, and it could be pretty interesting and fun to see how that works out. All right, so guys, so that is just a little something that, you know, out of the blue, and hopefully you guys can enjoy this. Guys, if you like my videos, please share, like, subscribe. And then we got some more Wanda coming in with Justice after that. And here I'll see if I can do a couple deck builds for every aspect. I know I only did one for aggression, but I think this I like protection more, so maybe that's why I'm like, oh, I'll just build 2. All right, so guys, this is Steve from Beat the Game, hoping this video and these little strategies will help you beat the game. Ciao, ciao.